Hey freaks, Kyle here. We have a big announcement to make. We now release next week's episode a whole week early, free, on our new Patreon page. This is perfect for all our die-hard freaks of the show who can't wait for our next spectacular. So come one, come all, and become a certified freak by joining us over on Patreon. Now, let's go on with today's show. So famously, on those occasions, she would just rip open her shirt and expose her breasts to the audience, inviting everyone to make up their own mind about her sex.
I can imagine that, and like the buttons fly open, and everyone goes,
Yes. Apparently her breasts were really large as well, and she probably got a lot more tips. So, but my point is that they seem like swindler types anyway, so I wouldn't be surprised if they arranged for those hecklers to be in the audience beforehand, just to have that moment where she just lobs out a boob.
Yeah, I guess so. I was just thinking if she was in a fight, she could do that, and that would stun the other person she's dueling, and then she can just stab him.
Welcome to the Compendium, an assembly of fascinating and intriguing things. We're a weekly variety podcast where each week I tell Adam Cox all about a topic I think he'll find both fascinating and intriguing. We dive into stories pulled from the darker corners of true crime, the annals of your old unread history books, and the who's who of extraordinary people. We give you just enough information to stand your ground at any social gathering. I'm of course your ringmaster this week, Kyle Risi.
I'm your sideshow freak this week, Adam Cox.
Do you think that's going to stick?
What else is like a sidekick in a circus?
The bearded lady.
I'm your bearded lady this week, Adam Cox.
Yes! I wonder what you'll be next week.
Oh no, three-breasted lady.
You would like that, wouldn't you? 3 breasts. I'm just fascinated by breasts. I love them.
Especially when there's 3.
Especially, yeah. 3 times the fun, right?
So what are you adding into the Compendium library today, Kyle?
In today's Compendium, we are diving into an assembly of daring duels and opera tales that break all of the gender rules.
Opera tales and gender rules.
Mm-hmm.
Some opera singer, maybe, who wasn't a man, or maybe was a man, or perhaps was a woman. I don't know. I have no idea what this is about.
Today we're talking about a woman called Julie.
Julie?
From finance.
From finance?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Is that what we've got to?
No.
This better be good, Kyle.
Adam, get ready to be amazed, because today I'm going to tell you the extraordinary tale of the true story of Julie. Should have checked how to pronounce her surname.
Do you just want to fact check that real quick?
Yeah, take 2. Adam, get ready to be amazed, because today I'm going to tell you the extraordinary true story of Julie Daubonnet, a woman whose daring exploits, defiance of social norms, and sheer audacity have almost been lost to the annals of time. The best way that I can sum up Julie is for you to imagine a figure as charming and as controversial as Casanova himself, and the inspiration behind the legendary character of Arya Stark from the Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay.
She's always been like a bit of a wild child in Game of Thrones, right? Very good with kind of the sword. Is she male?
Needle.
Is she... Yes, that's it. She had a little needle. Is she a male? Is she a female? Was she attracted to men? Was she attracted to women? And apparently, like in the folklore of Game of Thrones, she goes off and does some incredible things. She goes and wanders the world, sails the world. Mm-hmm. It's very much the inspiration for Arya Stark in terms of Julie Daubonnet.
I don't think I've ever heard of this woman, because it feels like... Has there been like a film about her or anything? Or?
There have been a couple films about her. Not that I've looked into them too much. Only when I was doing the research did I find that there have been a couple shows. Mm-hmm. Do you remember the woman who was married to Joffrey, whose grandmother was the matriarch of the house somewhere down in Dawn? She was the one who famously called Joffrey a cunt. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah, is that one with like the flat
Yes,
cap?
her daughter. What was the actress's name? Because she's also in...
I know the one you mean, yeah. She got blown up, didn't she, with the fire, whatever.
So she actually plays Julie in some kind of film or TV series. And Julie's story takes place in Paris in the late 1600s. It was a time and a city of grandeur, decadence, and very strict social codes where gender roles were rigidly defined. It was a world where women were expected to be demure and obedient, to find a husband and to produce offspring. But Julie shattered all of these conventions. She was an incredible opera singer, dressed in men's clothing, was always ready to duel any man who dared to insult her honor, and was an insatiable lover who had many, many affairs with many, many men and many, many women over the course of her life. Julie was the original feminist and queer icon, a symbol of the resistance against the oppressive norms of her time. And while she didn't change the world or help millions of starving peasants, she did live a hedonistic life, living by her own rules. Like, daily life for her was just a whirlwind of love affairs and outrageous antics. She committed also a whole bunch of crimes, including, but not limited to, stealing dead bodies, kidnapping lovers, stabbing people, including herself, and at one time, she even burnt down a convent.
Oh my word, this woman sounds extreme.
And the thing is, though, Julie's story matters because it was almost forgotten to history. And her incredible life stands as a reminder that there have always been women pushing through those gender barriers to be seen as equal, living their lives in accordance to the men around them and the boundaries dictated by society. And her story is a reminder to anyone, not just women, but also members of the LGBT community, people of color, men who don't fit the mold that's expected of them, that if a 17th century woman could fight against the norms when the stakes were even greater, then we can continue to persevere in light of kind of the overwhelming societal pressures, you know? Not all of the sources in the story are reliable, because historians have argued over just some basic details, but I'm going to give you the rundown of the very best parts of her, unfortunately, very short life.
Which may or may not be true.
What I'm going to tell you is pretty much true. It's on the record somewhere. I'm not making it up. But some of the details are argued about because it happened so long ago. And a lot of the accounts come like pretty much 50 years after she died. So you can take them with a grain of salt. They come with a bit of folklore attached to it.
I'm guessing there's going to be some allegedly and supposedly definitions in it.
That's right. So I'm super excited about today's story. Her exploits, her passionate affairs, her fearless defiance. Today's episode is going to be...
a doozy.
A doozy.
Cool. All right, I'm excited.
But before we kick off, as we always do, it's time for all the latest things. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, step right up and welcome to All the Latest Things, where we unveil the fascinating, the extraordinary, and the downright loopy stories, strange facts, and intriguing tidbits from the past week. Adam, what have you got for us today?
Well, Carl, I've got a couple of things for you this week. And my first thing is part of one of the age-old debates that people have argued about over time, such as...
Length or girth?
Well, yes, that's one. I was going to try a little bit more highbrow with...
highbrow?
Nature versus nurture.
Oh, okay.
Realism versus idealism. Science versus religion.
Okay.
Evolution versus creationism. Or... which way you hang your toilet paper.
Oh, I know this one. I have very strong opinions on this. I'm ready for this debate. I'm ready for this fight.
Ready for this fight. Some people will hang their toilet paper with the sheets facing out.
Yes.
And then the other way of doing it is back to front, where the sheets are
Go
facing
down the wall.
And so people have argued what's right and wrong, because some say, I don't know, it's easier to grab hold. Some's more hygienic, so you're not touching all the blue roll or whatever. So what's your thoughts on this?
Straight away, I can tell you that beards are cool, mullets are not.
Right, okay.
And that should tell you everything you need to know. Because mullets go down the back, beards come on the front. So you should always hang your toilet roll with the beard facing forward.
Well,
mullets are not cool.
They are cool right now.
Yeah, okay. So maybe it's time to turn your toilet roll around. Why, what's your take on this?
So, because people have been talking about this for ages, and I've always had it, or typically the bearded way, but then sometimes I'm thinking, well, maybe the other way is better. But actually, people have referred back to the original patent for the toilet paper, which is like back in
Someone
80
has
something.
a patent. Someone patented the toilet paper.
Yeah, I think it was like the second iteration or whatever, and the perforated design, it should be easy to tear off.
Sure.
And the original patent has the toilet roll with a sheet of paper hanging down the front.
So beards are cool.
Beards are cool. So that is the official way that you should be hanging your toilet paper.
And I agree, and I'll tell you why. Because there is nothing that I appreciate more in this life. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to say it. I don't care what you guys think. We have a cleaner. She's brilliant. She's a great friend of ours. And when she comes over and she cleans our bathroom and she does that little triangle thing and then gets the little water stamp and stamps it down. So it's like you're at the hotel. That is just the best touch that anyone can do for you during a clean. It just makes the whole loo experience so much better.
It really elevates the bathroom.
It does. And and I'm not saying that we have tons of money that we can afford a cleaner, because I promise you, we make sacrifices so we can have this cleaner, right? Like if anything else changed in our budget, she'd have to go and I'd be really sad. But she does that, and that's only possible with the beard.
Yeah.
It wouldn't work with the mullet.
That nice little stamp.
Actually, let me just check something. She came yesterday.
I can answer that, and she didn't.
She didn't do it!
No.
Did she not?
No.
Right, that's it, Lois. You're sacked.
And so my second thing this week is I've come across something that has disappointed me with human nature.
What's that? Length or girth?
No. Have you heard of and I'm going to use this very loosely, sport called hobby horsing?
Yes, I have. I don't know if our listeners have, though.
And I feel like that exasperation, you're probably on the same wavelength as me.
It just depends. It depends who's doing it, right? I can get it if a kid is doing it, but I do know that it's big with adults.
So in Finland, there's competitions held where countries all over the world come to participate. So for the listeners that have never heard of this, which I hadn't until this week, hobby horsing is when, you remember, probably the girls tends to be, did you have a horse, with a horse head on a stick, and you'd have some handles and you'd stick the stick between your legs and you'd gallop around the house? This is what adults are doing. And they're almost like dressage or show jumping with real horses, where they're around a track or an arena and they've got these like 3-foot fences that they need to jump across.
On this stick.
And whilst they're not jumping, they're then trotting as if they are on an actual horse. And I am just like, this is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
And so it's come under a bit of an attack because people are criticizing that this is not a sport. And because I think it's aimed towards young girls who are obviously perhaps more into it than anyone else.
I don't think it's just young girls. I'm sure I've seen older women and men doing this.
Well, I think it's most popular between ages 10 and 20. I mean, it's 20, it's still quite old to be doing this.
Once you start getting boobies, it's time to retire the hobby horse.
So yeah, I've got a video. I'll just play it to you real quick.
Okay, so what I'm watching is someone literally trotting around, as you would expect, on this hobby horse, but it looks like they're doing the Ministry of Funny Walks from Monty Python.
Yeah, but this is like this huge sport and people are trying to get some accreditation for it and fighting back to say, no, the amount of hip mobility needed to do this is actually insane. And these athletes would give hurdle jumpers a run for their money.
No, Adam.
So, yeah.
Do you know, this is a symptom of peacetime? Too much peacetime. This is a result of being too content and not having too much to worry about in your life.
Yeah. You're having fun. There's no harm in it. It's just very weird.
Amazing. So my all the latest things is the whole Pepsi Cola kind of battle, right? What do you prefer? I mean, we don't really drink soft drinks anyway, but if you had to pick Pepsi or Cola, do you have a preference? To me, they taste the same.
I think Pepsi Max does taste a little bit different. I prefer that, but maybe that's just a preference, or I think I prefer that. I don't actually know.
Interesting.
If I did a blind taste test, I don't know if I would know.
I don't know if I would know either. For some reason, though, I always feel like Coca-Cola gives you a weird kind of film over your teeth, and that's normally how I can tell. But I don't know. I don't really have a preference for it. But what I was really fascinated by, and I was thinking about doing this as a topic, but I wanted to just tell you about it because it was just mental. The story is mental. So when you're thinking about which colas you prefer, you need to consider that in 1992, Pepsi attempted to compete with Coca-Cola inadvertently, leading to the deaths of several people in the Philippines. At a time when Pepsi was struggling to compete with Coca-Cola, which of course was the biggest soft drink brand in the world, so as a way to try and claim some of Coca-Cola's market share, Pepsi decided to launch the Cola Wars. So the Cola Wars that exist
Yes.
was a marketing campaign by Pepsi, which they started off inadvertently because, of course, they wanted to claim some market share, but then they started leaning into it when people started noticing that there was a very clear battle going on. So to Pepsi's surprise, all of this paid off, and Pepsi began to gain ground against Coca-Cola in the United States. But when Pepsi decided to take the battle to the global stage to win market dominance in other countries, the Philippines was a particularly attractive market because they had one of the highest per capita soft drink consumption rates in the world. That's an actual stat, which is crazy. Now, despite their efforts, Coca-Cola remained supreme for most Filipinos, right? As Pepsi was about to admit defeat, they tried one last-ditched effort to try and turn the tide, and they launched a campaign called Pepsi Number Fever. They printed basically on the underside of all the bottle caps a mini kind of lottery number.
Okay.
And each week they would do a draw where you could win 1 million pesos. And basically that was the equivalent of 611 times the average monthly salary of a Filipino.
So quite a lot.
So the campaign was massive. And instantly in the first month, it increased Pepsi's market share from 19% to a whopping 24%. That's just 1 month. So it was hugely effective. So when the draw took place, the winning number 349 was called, and almost immediately the hotlines were inundated with Filipinos calling in to claim their winnings because it turned out that they had printed that number 800,000 times on a bunch of bottle caps across the entire country.
Whoever was responsible for quality control.
Yeah, someone's getting sacked, right? Because this led to widespread chaos with hundreds of thousands of people believing they had won 1 million pesos. So Pepsi, of course, quickly announced their mistake and people were just outraged. Like protests erupted across the country. Pepsi trucks were overturned. They were stoned. They were burned. Pepsi executives received death threats. In May of 1993, 3 Pepsi employees were killed after a protester threw a grenade into a warehouse.
Oh, geez, that's not cool.
It's not cool. But then even on top of that, a couple months previous, a homemade bomb was thrown at a Pepsi truck, killing a school teacher and a 5-year-old child in Manila.
Wow.
Adam, this story is nuts.
So when people say about the Cola Wars or whatever, I generally just thought, oh, market share. No, this is actual
blood
war.
was shed.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this as an episode. It's just mental. But also in the fallout of this as well, approximately 22,000 people ended up taking legal action against PepsiCo. And Pepsi was forced to pay like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of fines to the Department of Trade and to various kind of people that brought lawsuits. And the fallout of this continued until 2006, with people still bringing forward cases and lawsuits.
That is a momentous F up.
It's mental. Can you imagine it? What do you reckon? Do you reckon we should do that as a story?
That could be a good one, yeah. So the bit that I remember, because it's more in America, the wars, which no bloodshed. But I remember there was like this stat that Pepsi was selling 2 Pepsis for every Coke being sold in the US.
Wow.
But then Coca-Cola did a TV advert of this short kid going to a vending machine, putting in money, and because the Coca-Cola button was at the very top of the vending machine, he couldn't reach it. So he'd buy 2 Pepsi cans, stand on the Pepsi cans, and then buy a Coke.
Just one Coke.
One Coke, and then would walk off and drink that. That was just that's how they responded to it, which I think is very good marketing.
So I see. So what they're saying is that this is the reason why they've overtaken. Coke is still the preferred, but people are just using this to get to Coke. Yeah. Using Pepsi to get to Coke.
Exactly, yeah.
Very funny. Very good. That's all the latest things. So Adam, Julie Daubigny. Actually, do you know what? I'm just going to say this right now. There's going to be a lot of French accents and there's going to be a lot of French names and I'm going to butcher all of them. All right? So you just have to just deal with it.
Yeah, in all honesty, we don't have a lot of French listeners, so I think we'll be fine.
And that's why we don't have princesses. Because they go, oh my God, he butchered our language. That was awful. What was that?
That was definitely not French.
That was not French. But anyway, Julie d'Aubigné, she was born sometime between 1670 and 1673. Now, she was an only child, and lucky for her, she was part of the upper middle French noble class, right? She wasn't quite nobility, but she was part of that world. Mm-hmm. This gave her some huge advantages in her life. We don't know anything about her mother because she clearly wasn't that important enough for anyone to write anything down about her. But we'll call her Sandra just for reference, and we will not mention her again at all throughout this episode.
Okay. Okay. Weird.
Adam's mother's name's Sandra, and I hate her. What we do know is that her father was a very important man in French aristocracy, and his name was Gaston, and he was the private secretary of the Count d'Armagnac. Now, to give you a sense of how high up his boss was, the Count d'Armagnac, his boss's boss was the King of France, right? And the Count's job was to oversee the royal stables and the education of all the court pages, essentially. So thanks to Papa Gaston, Julie had a very privileged upbringing and had access to one of the best educations in Europe at the time, particularly for a girl. Very few women were pretty much educated back then, so the system wasn't really equipped to accommodate young girls. It was very male-orientated. So Julie undertook her studies along with all the young royal page boys in the French court and showed great aptitude for the subjects that she was learning about. And because this was a boarding school, Julie spent most of her waking hours with the boys. So to fit in, she became accustomed to dressing in boys' clothes, and because her father was absorbed in the world of education, she actually ended up attending school for many more years than a standard page would have done anyway. I guess it's like daycare, right? It's not, I need to keep her somewhere. I'll just keep her in school.
Just stick her long hair under a hat and no one will know.
I think they did know. That's the thing, though. So she wasn't disguised as a boy as such. She just wore boys' clothing. She was very proud of the fact that she was a woman. Mm-hmm. But she just also looked really great in boys' clothes, essentially.
Well, even as like a kid, she was very proud to be a woman.
I don't think so. I don't think she had any issues with her gender. But in terms of her studies, all in all, Julie was an excellent writer. She was a brilliant dancer, very skilled as an artist. But she was also a very highly skilled swordswoman. And all of this was because, of course, her father Gaston was a bit of a progressive wild child himself. And growing up, he had seen the seedy side of France during kind of his nightly pub crawls around the city. So he was very familiar with the worst of humanity in like France 1700s. And Gaston was already an elite fencer, and he wanted to make sure that Julie was also able to look after herself if she ever needed to. So her privileged life overall instilled in her a very strong sense of confidence and intelligence about the academic world, but it also provided her with street smarts. On top of this, she was also really hot.
Wow, she sounds quite unique.
She is. Irish stock, man. So when she was around 14 years old, she catches the eye of her father's boss, the Count Armagnac. Now, he was 32 years her senior. Remember, she's 14 at this point. So together they start an affair, though considering his age and position, it's clearly not an affair. But
no, it's well, we all know what it is.
Yeah, but historians are calling it an affair.
They put a nice little romantic spin on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So this led the Count to introducing Julie to the King's court in Versailles. But even back then, this was quite controversial of a situation, and it didn't come without its criticisms from the other courtiers. Also, Julie technically wasn't a noble. She didn't have a title, which only added to the scandal. So there were like a lot of whispering and gossiping going around about her. So the Count needed to provide Julie with a respectable title. He couldn't marry her himself because, of course, he was already married. So the Count found a man named Monsieur Maupin. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Maupin.
Maupin.
Isn't pau bread? No, that's Portuguese. Sorry, carry on.
We cannot get bogged down in these pronunciations. Monsieur Maupin.
Okay.
So in 1687, he arranged for the two of them to be married. And once Monsieur Maupin had served his purpose, the Count then sent him off to oversee tax collections on the behalf of the crown in kind of the southern provinces of France. Of course, Julie stayed in Versailles, and that allowed them to continue their affair without any kind of side eye or controversy from the other courtiers.
Right. Okay.
So she has a husband now, but
that's just for show.
For essentially, yeah, to stop the gossiping.
And what I'm guessing, like getting married at 14 was fine back then. It wasn't like frowned upon.
I don't think so. No. I mean, there are some countries where the age of consent for marriage is quite low anyway. In the UK, it's what, 16, is it? Or have we increased it to 18?
I don't know. But even still, 14 feels,
14 is very young.
you should have been still playing with your wooden dolls on your spinning wheel.
That is right. Not this chick, man. I think she was so worldly and so street smart. I think she was years beyond her years.
Okay.
So she stays behind in Versailles, but it wasn't long before Julie's temper starts getting a bit too much for the Count. At first, he was able to deal with it privately, but then more and more people in society start talking about the way she'd lose her temper in shops, often resulting in her, literally assaulting the shopkeeper. And on top of this, she would also often frequent the local taverns at night, getting drunk and purposely starting fights with other young noblemen.
Wow, she is...
She's a firecracker, Adam.
Yeah, she's fearless.
She is a firecracker, and we haven't even started yet. So the Count thought it would be best for them to take a little break, and he decides to end their relationship. And she was, of course, completely fine with this because she already had another affair going on the side. So over the years, she'd obviously kept up her fencing practices, and she had started an affair with a fencing instructor called Saran. Now, by this point, the records suggest that she was around 16 or 17 years old. Now, to keep their affair under wraps, they told everyone that he was her teacher, when in fact she was clearly the better swordswoman of the two. And they were literally a match made in heaven. Both extremely boisterous, loving a couple pints down the pub or the local tavern, which often resulted in them together starting brawls just for fun.
That is as if that's what you do with your partner.
Why don't we go off starting fights? Like little slappy fights, the little gay ones where they go...
Because, Kyle, we would get locked up.
Would we? Or would we get beaten up?
Locked up in like an asylum.
Being a pansy is not a sickness, Adam. I thought we'd come past that. No longer do you need therapy to treat pansyism.
Pansyism.
So one evening, their favourite little pastime resulted in an illegal street fight that ended up in Saran actually killing a guy, right? And as a result, they had to flee to Marseille to avoid getting arrested and potentially executed by the King's Guard. Like, duels were completely illegal in France at this time. The only reason Julie went with Saran was because he had promised her that he would be able to support them both financially, so she just figured it would be a bit of fun down by kind of the seaside. When they get there, she started using her maiden name as a way of kind of avoiding being tracked down by the authorities, but it wasn't long before it transpired that Saran had totally exaggerated his financial situation, and both Saran and Julie were then forced to do whatever they needed to do to secure some kind of income for themselves, so they had to go and start working.
That's what happens when you go out with a murderer.
I don't think he intentionally killed. I don't think it was premeditated. He was just a bit of a thug, you know. Check me out sympathizing with the thugs. What can you do? I like a bad boy. So what they started doing was putting on these shows in different taverns and pubs around the city. It was like kind of a combination of showing off their sword fencing skills through the art of song and theatrical kind of storytelling to all the drunk patrons in the pub. And after the performance, they would then walk around and then ask for money. So they were kind of like grifting. And they actually made a ton of money doing this. The thing that punters loved the most was seeing a woman be able to demonstrate such a high degree of skill in fencing, and their minds were just blown. Fair enough, like she was dressed as a boy, but again, she wasn't disguised as a boy. So they just loved it. I think there's like a bit of a sordid kind of element to that as well. Like men just found it really hot to see a woman in these boy clothes, like doing boy stuff. And I think there's something quite sexy about that sometimes.
I guess if she's not, she's maybe just got her hair tied up, whatever, and still obviously a woman, but I guess she's so different to any other woman around at the moment.
Yeah, like it's a little treat, right? Oh, I've not seen that one before.
Well, I guess just, a strong, confident woman, I guess maybe I don't know.
Like I said, when she dressed as a boy, she wasn't disguising herself as a boy. She was very proud that she was a woman. It was just more practical to wear a shirt and breeches rather than a big hoop skirt and corset when you are like fencing.
Yeah,
essentially.
She's being practical.
She's being practical. So when she was doing these little shows in these taverns to earn some money, some spectators refused to believe that she was even a woman. She'd often get hecklers who thought that she was just a young prepubescent boy with a nice singing voice and really good with a sword. Just rip open her top and then just do a little wiggle. And then they get all stunned and they're like,
Mesmerised, and then she just jabs them in the
Yes.
neck.
Underhand tactics, Adam.
Well, she got to do what she got to do.
All's fair in love and war.
Okay.
So through this grift, she found out that she had a real talent for singing. People said her voice had a really low register, but also had this phenomenal range. The best way to describe her voice would be to liken her to Cher. What? Why is that funny?
Just the thought of her just going, whoa. And doing the hair flick.
With the French accent, right?
Oh.
God. Anyway, so one day she enrolls in the music academy to train professionally in singing and dancing. And a while later, her tutor helps her and Saran get a working gig at a theatre, and she is a huge hit. She genuinely was good at holding an audience, and as time passed, she started to kind of get a bit bored with Saran and wondered like what it might be like to go to bed with another woman.
Oh, a sexual awakening.
Yes, that's a
Or
very
reawakening.
Yeah, reawakening.
Well, she's already probably awakened one sexual part of her. This is like a whole new experiment. Either way, she's experimenting.
She's waking up. So basically, she just really wanted to know what it was like to just bump boobs with another lady. And of course, this probably wasn't something that she decided on a whim. Very often, women would approach her at these shows. So it was something that she most likely had wondered about for a while. So one night, after a performance, she met a young woman who indicated that she might be interested in a bit of girl-on-girl action. One thing led to another, and before you know it, they were embroiled in a hot, steamy lesbian love affair.
Wow.
But then, of course, as it always happens, the girl's parents find out, and being absolutely horrified, they immediately ship her off to a convent in Avignon to keep them apart, probably hoping that the nunnery would help them pray the gay away.
Or the fact they're shipping her off to a convent which is full of women.
I know! I know!
We know about my nun story with the lesbians.
Exactly. So by sending a lesbian to a convent in the hope of making them less gay is probably not the most effective tactic you can think of. But nothing was going to keep Julie away from her girl. We don't actually know this girl's real name, by the way, but I feel like she does need a name because we're going to mention her for the next few paragraphs. So let's call her Gus.
Gus.
Classic lesbian name.
What about Mary?
No, Gus! The thing is, though, the only other name that I could think of for a lesbian was Julie.
Well, can't be another Julie.
I know, exactly. It can't be the two Julies.
Other Julie.
I think we should stick with Gus.
Okay.
So Julie followed Gus to Avignon and enrolled as a nun so that she and Gus could continue bouncing boobs against each other at the convent.
Is that a term that lesbians use? I've never heard a lesbian say bumping boobs.
I mean, I just want to make it very clear that my understanding of anything feminine is very lacking. So I just assume that's what they're for. No?
They're not like, no.
I've seen some lesbian pornos and they do push their boobs together a little bit. And they're just like,
Oh, God.
Are you saying that they don't bounce boobs?
They're,
I mean, I feel like if I had boobs, I would want to bounce them
okay.
against other boobs if I was a lesbian.
Yeah. I'm not sure about that. There goes all the lesbian listeners.
So the thing is, though, living at the convent turned out to be pretty awful. Although it was quite exciting to sneak off and have some kind of sexy nipple play, the rest of the time was just filled with constant cleaning and praying. And this started to wear Julie down, so she promised Gus that she would hatch a plan for them to escape in such a way that nobody would come looking for them. Because they couldn't just leave. Someone would always kind of be looking out for them, right? So Julie's plan was to wait for one of the older nuns to die. And as luck would have it, she didn't need to wait very long because, of course, they live in a convent. So in the middle of the night, Julie breaks into the dead nun's crypt. She carries the body up to Gus's room. She places the nun's body in Gus's bed. And then together, they set the entire convent on fire.
Oh, so she's using her to they'll find a body and they'll think it's Gus.
Exactly.
I see. That is clever.
So, of course, everyone thinks that Gus has burned to death in his sleep, and now they can run away together and nobody will be looking for them. But weirdly, no one seems to care where Julie is.
Yeah. And also, what about the nun that has actually died? They're like, oh, there's Gus, but what happened to the actual dead nun?
She's already been buried and she's in her crypt. So they've had the ceremony over
Oh,
there.
they actually got out of the crypt.
Yeah, they snuck into the crypt. So they're not looking for her. They just think it's Gus.
Okay. Wow, she's quite a woman.
But again, back to my point, like no one seems to care where Julie is. I mean, I know like her temper is terrible, so they probably are just glad to get rid of her, but no one seems to care where she is. They're just worrying about where Gus is.
Gus cares where she is.
We'll see, actually, because off they go to be together in some other part of France. And for 3 months, they're really happy. They're just living their lives, doing what lesbians do. Gus is mowing the lawn. Julie is building a deck, all the classics. But then Julie starts to realise that Gus is a bit of a whinger, so she just ditches her. And I know this sounds brutal, but Julie actually does Gus a massive favour just because of what else she gets up to. She's just too much of a loose cannon.
They've just done all this together. Mm-hmm. They've dug up a body, committed arson, and then she's just gone, oh, do you know what? This isn't worth it.
You whinge too much.
Yeah.
Listen, I can't do the washing up and do the laundry and do everything else that I do and build the damn deck.
I just want a glass of wine. Let me be.
I need to put my feet up. Listen, Gus. So Gus makes her way back home to her family and she tells them the whole story. How Julie, of course, enrolled in the convent as a nun, how she stole a nun's body to fake her death, and how Julie had coerced her and that she was to blame for everything. Basically, she was just playing the victim in all of this. And they believed her story, and as a result, she didn't need to go back to the convent. But Gus's parents decided that they were going to alert the authorities, and they put Julie on trial, even though nobody knows where she was.
Oh.
And at the trial, she is sentenced to death by fire for the crimes of kidnapping, body snatching, arson, and also failing to appear before the court when she didn't even know that she needed to attend.
That feels like a little bit harsh. I mean, all the other stuff, yeah, that's pretty serious. And then they're like, yeah, but she didn't turn up. We didn't tell her, but she didn't turn up.
Exactly. It's ridiculous. So Julie had no choice. She had to flee. The only place she thinks to go to get out of this mess was back to Paris, and that maybe her ex-lover, the Count, could possibly help. So she sets off towards the capital, stopping at various cities along the way. And to help pass the time, she tries her hand at writing some of her own kind of original songs and then performing them in local taverns to earn a bit of coin. It's through these performances that she meets an old drunken actor called Marechal. Now, he is really impressed with her voice, and he tells her that he knows all about voices and talent, and under his tutelage, in 5 years, he could make her the premiere of the French opera. So obviously, being a massive attention seeker, she decides that she's going to stick around and perfect her operatic technique.
Uh-huh.
But this doesn't last very long because his alcoholism is so bad that he can't even get through a single lesson with her.
Right. So he's trying to like teach her his ways, but actually he's awful. But you know, I don't think I'd ever buy. Like this is some drunk that's
exactly. They met in a pub.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, I can teach you a thing or two.
Yeah. So she hits the road again. She still doesn't know what she's going to do about the death penalty sentence and is still dragging her feet towards Paris. Like, she doesn't know really what to expect when she gets to Paris because, like, will the King's Guard be waiting for her? Will someone spot her and then dob her in? So it's risky. So she's, like, taking her time, trying to, like, avoid going to Paris, but knowing that she needs to go there.
Mm-hmm.
So remember, Adam, she's really gorgeous. And she's also alone in a very dangerous world. So when men see her, they want to try it on. And they don't know that she's actually a vixen. So often she finds herself getting into a lot of these different scrapes and tussles with these unsavory characters on the road. And one of the most famous examples of this was the time that she almost killed a man in a fight, and then she took him as a lover the very next day.
So when she's like beating the crap out of him, she then went, oh, actually, I could see something with us.
I like how you cower in the corner.
Yeah.
I might make you my mistress.
So is she like beating them up with like her fists or with a sword?
All sorts. Canes, fists, swords, everything. She's a brilliant fighter.
I really would love to have seen her in action.
So the story goes that she was doing her usual thing, singing for some money in a local tavern one evening when Louis Joseph tries a really sleazy pickup line on her. And because, of course, she's always on her guard, She doesn't take it very well. So she challenges him to a duel, which of course he accepts. And the two of them go outside to the courtyard. And in front of Louis Joseph's friends, Julie absolutely smashes him to the point that Louis's friends have to also jump in to try and help him. And she smashes them too. And the fight ends abruptly when Julie skewers Louis Joseph clean through the shoulder so that when Louis Joseph turned his head, he could see the sword poking out through his back.
Eek.
It is bad.
Yeah.
So she immediately pulls the sword out and she legs it, leaving him lying in the street bleeding with all his friends looking on in horror. And the next day, upon reflection, she feels that maybe she might have overreacted just a little. And she starts to try and track him down to apologize. Plus, she thinks he's really hot as well.
She just couldn't get him out of her head, obviously. The chat up line worked. She just maybe,
It's like, you cower well. I like it. I like my men to cower and squirm. So she decides that she's going to go to a local barber who at the time would often moonlight as surgeons.
Like Sweeney Todd.
Exactly like that. She went there just on the off chance that maybe he had seen someone from the night before looking a little worse for wear, needing assistance. And as luck would have it, the barber points her to where this man was staying and tells her that the guy that she skewered was actually the son of a count.
Oh, of all the people to skewer.
So this changes everything, because before, when she just thought he was a regular Joe Schmo, she was just going to like spit in her hand and offer him a handshake. So she now had to go back to her place and think about how to handle the situation, because she needs to be a bit delicate with it.
Yeah.
So it just so happens that when she gets home, one of the Count's friends is waiting there to offer the Count sincerest apologies. And Julie's like, oh, he wants to apologize to me?
Yeah, he should be sorry.
He should be sorry, yeah. So off Julie goes to see the Count. And of course, one thing leads to another. And they end up having very aggressive, very angry makeup sex.
How do you know it's aggressive?
I just assume it's aggressive. It's got to be, right?
So this is you...
Artistic license.
Okay, fine, right. Good.
Yeah. The thing is, though, they kept up correspondence throughout the years anyway. So this is how it was described in the notes. So, yeah, I don't know how they know, but because they wrote letters back and forth, I imagine there might have been reminiscing.
Right, okay.
Reminiscings about this occasion.
Okay. It was a passionate night.
So she sticks around and she nurses the Count back to health. And along the way, they fall madly in love. But I want to remind you just for a second that Julie, remember, she's married to Monsieur Maupin.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing can actually happen between them anyway. It can't go any further than just a bit of a tryst, right?
And she's a wanted woman.
But then the king orders Louis Joseph to return to the court in Versailles. And of course, Julie is a wanted woman, so she can't go with him. So they have to part ways, and they promise that one day they'll reunite again. And for the rest of her very short life, they continue to write letters back and forth.
Reminiscing about that night.
Reminiscing about the angry sex. Remember that time I skewered you? And you cowered like a baby and made me really hot? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So next, Julie finds herself in a town called Rouen in the northwest of France, where she meets another singer called Gabriel Vincent. Now, he isn't a drunkard this time. So Gabriel is actually an inspiring opera singer who left his family business to try and make it in the Parisian opera. However, because he lacked experience, he sings in bars and taverns, and this is how kind of him and Julie cross paths. So very soon after meeting, they decide that they're actually quite a good match and they should perform together. So they start performing to try and make a bit of coin, and Gabrielle instantly falls in love with her. But for Julie, Gabrielle is just a friend with benefits. She lets him accompany her to Paris because he's going that way anyway. But she has to dump him just before she gets there because she can't risk being spotted with someone and then turning her in. So she dumps Gabriel at like a crossroads somewhere, and she heads off into Paris without him. She figured the best way to navigate this situation is to visit her old friend and lover, the Count Armagnac, her father's boss, if you remember, right? Mm-hmm. So she thinks that he could potentially help her, and sure enough, he still has a soft spot for her, and he agrees to go and see the king and request a formal royal pardon on her behalf. So Count Armagnac tells the king the full story, and the king is highly amused by the whole thing. He instantly overrules her death sentence and fully pardons her because he finds the entire story of kidnapping a dead nun, burning down a convent just so like amusing. So he pardons her, and it was as easy as that.
That's, I guess it was so uncommon, but that feels a little bit, I don't know, corrupt of a king.
Why?
Well, just get like, oh, you know.
I mean, it's his country. He can do what he wants, right?
Yeah, I guess she didn't kill anyone at that point.
But I mean, kidnapping of a dead nun's body.
Yeah, it's a little against the church.
And so, yeah. So, and finally, Julie is now a free woman once again. How old do you think she is at this point?
Okay, so I feel like she's like toured the country and done so much. Feels like she should be in her 30s. But I'm guessing she's probably like 21.
Yeah, she's 20. She's
Wow.
done all of that and she's 20.
She's still beating people up. Yeah, I guess she has to be quite young in order to have all that energy to skewer men.
I wish I could skewer you like I did when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so she's 20 and life is good. She's starting afresh and things are really taking off for her because Gabriel Vincent was waiting for her, and having managed to get a gig in the Paris Opera on his first day in the city, he gets her an audition too. However, when she goes for the audition, she completely flubs it and they tell her to go away, practice a bit more, and then come back the next year. So she is gutted.
I guess she's been like a tavern singer up until this point in like street shows and stuff. And this is a bit different, isn't it? But then, was she known for being operatic then? Is that kind of, yeah, okay.
Yeah, you wait. You wait, Adam.
Okay.
Things are going to take off for her.
Is she just going to go out, do you know what? I'll take your feedback on and constructive criticism and I'm going to go and practice.
No.
I don't exactly.
No. So Julie does the obvious thing and she seduces the best friend of the guy who manages the opera and persuades him to get her into the show, which he does. And she makes her debut playing the goddess Athena in Cadmus and Hermione. And Adam, she's visually stunning, wearing this golden helmet, holding kind of this long spear, rising out of the stage. Overnight, after this performance, she becomes one of the biggest sensations across Paris. And she goes on to star in other productions, playing queens and goddesses, warriors. And she even sometimes plays the male role as well. Regardless, though, of the role, she always steals the show. People are obsessed with her because she's a proper method actor. And the thing is, though, now that she's a free woman, she can actually technically go back to using her married name. So she is Julie Maupin. But because she is so famous and so revered, that she earns the name La Maupin, which is the equivalent of you being so amazing that people start calling you the Cox.
And maybe they should. Wow. Yeah, and I love the fact that she seduced the guy in order to get in. That's really, I don't know, she didn't kill anyone. So
I feel like women have been like playing to their advantages for forever. And
Yeah.
why should they not, right?
And she's playing men as well. Like, she's quite versatile in terms of, I guess, lady's voice and then quite a deep voice as well. Or,
Yeah. She's not a femme lesbian. She's like she can do both. She's verse. She can be the femme and she can be the butch. So life for La Maupin is just incredible. She is the jewel of Paris. And of course, amongst all of this, she enjoys all the carnal pleasures afforded to her by her fame. She has lots of sex with the rest of the cast. It's very incestuous, Adam. Very. The story's got so much sex in it. Everyone's banging each other.
It's no different to, I guess, like TV shows now, like Love Island,
Are they banging on that?
don't they?
I guess it's implied.
Yeah.
Right? It's Love Island.
So even in the opera, that's what used to go on in France.
I guess it's with all these thespian types. That's what they do, right?
Lesbians.
Thespians. So for about 2 years, actually, speaking of thespians, for about 2 years, she actually has an affair with another female soprano in the opera. But that fizzles out when Julie meets another cast member who she becomes so deeply and obsessively infatuated with. The only problem is that this other actor is not interested in her at all. And after multiple rejections, she does the obvious thing and undertakes an elaborate suicide attempt to draw attention to herself and try and win over her affections.
This will snare me, that man or woman, I don't know.
It was a woman.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah. Of course, this doesn't work. She does, of course, survive the suicide attempt. She gets her life back on track. And while working at the opera, she continues to dress up as a boy looking for illegal jewels in Paris. The fact that these jewels are illegal only just adds to the thrill for her, I think. And she also has a nearly perfect record. So when you're really good at something and it's illegal, why would you not want to just continue doing it, right?
Yeah. Is she winning money for this as well? If there's kind of like
I just think she's just thirsty for blood. Yeah.
So she finishes her like singing gig and then goes out into the night and stabs some men.
100%. So when the rest of the cast find out about her skills in sword fighting, she gets teased a little bit and she ends up beating the absolute crap out of one of the tenors after he is a dick to her one night after the show. And the story is wild, Adam. So his name is Duminil. One night, Duminil is being particularly vulgar and he's propositioning almost every woman in the cast, including Julie. So she immediately shuts him down in her usual no-nonsense way, and he resorts to insulting her in front of everyone. And humiliated, Julie looks him dead square in the eye and warns him, Duminil, this is not over.
Do you know what? I think your French accent is getting better.
Did you like that?
No.
God damn it. So later that night, after everyone had left the theatre, she changes into one of the noblemen's kind of costumes that they have in their costume department, and she waits for Duminil to set off home. She intercepts him on the way home and she challenges him to a duel. Obviously, he doesn't recognize her, so Duminil is terrified and he refuses to draw his sword. So out of pity and disgust, she just beats the absolute crap out of him with her cane.
Like, I will fight you.
I will fight you. She steals his pocket watch and his snuff box and just leaves him cowering in the gutter. The next day at the opera, Duminil arrives, obviously beat up and covered in bruises, and he tells everyone that he was attacked by these three big guys the night before who he managed to fight off really quite valiantly, but they fought dirty, they overwhelmed him, and they stole his snuff box and his watch.
And so he's like, yeah, these big guys I did my best.
There were three of them. Oh my God.
I had no chance.
So this is the perfect setup for Julie. When he's done, she throws his belongings down at his feet and declares, Duminil, you are a liar and a coward. It was I alone who defeated you. You were afraid to fight, so I gave you a sound thrashing. As proof, I return to you your miserable watch and snuff box.
I don't know what that was. It was
Got
something.
really gruff.
Yeah.
Gruff towards the end.
Do you know, this is just like when Phoebe mugged Ross in Friends. And he's, oh no, it was these big guys. And she's, give me your money or your wallet, punk.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh my God, it was you.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So she completely disgraces him in front of everyone, and because he is such a dick, she becomes the hero of the cast.
Which is great, but I feel like it's not going to bode well for her long term.
No, this is over. That's it for him.
Oh, okay, fine.
It's not going to come back and bite her. I think he's learned his lesson.
Cool.
But the thing is, though, Julie does continue to get into trouble, sometimes landing herself in court. Once she was arrested for attacking her landlord because he wouldn't make her dinner after she came home too late. She beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, she is a bit, I really like her, but I don't want to be her friend.
No, you do want to be a friend, but you want to keep her on your good side.
Yeah, like see her maybe once every 3 months.
Another time she's arrested for threatening the Duchess of Luxembourg with a pistol. So Adam, she can't seem to control herself or shake that temper that has just been plaguing her since her childhood. One of my favourite stories, however, is how she humiliates the Countess at a ball with a bunch of radishes. So apparently the Countess had done something to offend her. And the Countess, of course, was wearing one of those big elaborate wigs, similar to like Marie Antoinette. Mm-hmm. So Julie would sneak up behind her and stick radishes in the back of her wig every time the Countess had turned her back. And then the whole party was just giggling at the Countess's expense before she then finds out what's going on.
That feels so childish, but I love that.
So she's always like nipping over. Oh, another radish. Oh, what was that? Pardon? Coming. So despite all of her antics, she just continues to be the belle of Paris. Everyone loves her or is in love with her or is jealous of her. And because of this, she is invited to all of the major social events, most notably. She is invited to a fancy ball that's been hosted by the king's brother, Philippe, the Duke of Orleans. So Philippe was known for his flamboyant lifestyle anyway, leading a very different life to the typical royal expectations at the time. Very different life to what the king was leading. Remember when we did the Marie Antoinette episode and we talked about the Grand Lever, which is the formal morning ceremony of the king's awakening and the dressing involving all the different courtiers, which based on their rank would be prescribed different roles of dressing the king. And if someone more senior would come in, then that person would then need to bow and succeed.
That's right.
Yeah, just all this ostentatious kind of like...
Stupid pageantry.
Exactly. Well, this system was the brainchild of Philippe. And of course, it was set up to keep all the nobles busy enough so they wouldn't have time to plot against the king. That's the purpose of all of that.
That's what the purpose was?
Yeah.
Oh, I need to be on the lookout in case someone more important comes in.
That's it. The thing is, though, because the king was so paranoid about someone doing a coup, he built the Palace of Versailles where he ordered all the nobles of France to come and live at the palace. So they all lived together. And because they were just walking around all day doing nothing, they were a bit bored, he created this system to keep them occupied and to make sure that no one overrules him.
Seems dumb. It's like Big Brother.
Yeah, it is. So this was Prince Philip's kind of brainchild. Philip was also really interesting because he often cross-dressed, Adam. Like, he would attend balls wearing the most exquisite gowns and jewels. And historians think that his mother, Anne of Austria, started encouraging him to be more effeminate, thinking that he would then pose less of a risk to the king's authority. But also he was openly attracted to men. So there's another win for the LGBTQ community.
That way it's...
Another one for the gays.
Yeah, gay Paris.
Do you think that's where it comes from?
Yeah, everyone wasn't gay in Paris and France.
I think it's meant to be happy.
Gay.
Undertones. So Philippe is throwing this outrageous ball. And even the king is going to be in attendance. So Julie decides that she's going to wear her best formal gentleman's outfit for the event. Remember, she isn't disguising herself as a man. She just loves how she looks in men's clothing. Plus, it draws a lot of attention that she craves. So during the evening, she starts flirting with several pretty young girls that are in attendance. Eventually, she hones in on one of the most beautiful young ladies that she has ever seen in her entire life. So she muscles her way into a group of gentlemen vying for the young lady's attention and completely cock-blocks them. She then hijacks a girl and takes the lead in several dances, and all the young men just watch on, seething. And the other lords and ladies are just gasping and tutting in disgust at this display.
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to do this at a formal dance. This would be a no-go.
Yeah, for sure. And then the room gives a collective shriek of outrage when Julie passionately kisses the woman in the middle of the dance floor in front of everyone. The men, feeling very emasculated, challenge her to a duel, and Julie is delighted to accept. And she's like, "At your service, gentlemen." Very gruff. She's been smoking a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So they head out to the courtyard, and Julie beats all three of the men up in an embarrassingly short amount of time. And everyone is just like, "Yes!" So immediately she's brought in front of the king. He takes one look at her and says, "You are La Maupin. I've heard of your handiwork. Need I remind you of my decree against duels in Paris?" Of course, she has no real defense at this moment in time because so many people have seen her having this duel. So she's just silent. So in disgust, the king just demands that she leave immediately and await her consequences. But before she does, she begs the king's brother to try and speak to the king to persuade him not to take things further. So she goes home. And the next day, she's just waiting in anticipation, expecting to be arrested at any moment, thinking for sure that she's going to be executed if Philip does not come through for her. And then someone arrives at her lodgings. It's not the king's guard coming to arrest her. It's someone from the court. And they're there to inform her that she has been let off on a technicality because the law clearly states that no man is allowed to duel. And since she was a woman, she technically hadn't committed a crime. And so this is the second time that she has been pardoned by the king.
Legal loophole there. That's a good one. But how is she getting away with so much? She's so jammy.
It's got to be because how beautiful she is and how tough she is.
I guess her talents. There's no one else like her.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's not inherently a bad person.
But she is breaking the rules, right? These rules are there and she's breaking them.
Yeah, but if the king ever needed to go to war, you want someone like her, clearly, because she beats up a lot of men.
You don't want to send her to war. You want to keep her close on hand to potentially give you a gentle spanking.
Maybe. Or she could be your bodyguard, I think.
Protect me, then spank me.
I need you day and night.
So she's been pardoned. But of course, when the news breaks that she has essentially gotten off on a technicality, not everyone in Paris is thrilled, especially the noble families of the three men that she attacked the night before. So she thinks, all right, I need to lay low for a while, and decides that she's going to get out of town for a bit. She jumps on a horse and she heads for Brussels. And as soon as she gets there, she seeks out the most powerful man that she can And that is a chap called Maximilian Emmanuel. And he is the Elector of Bavaria. Basically, he is a prince. She makes herself his mistress. And through his connections, she lands herself the leading role in the Brussels opera. So she's jammy.
Yeah.
But even in Brussels, she doesn't learn her lesson. Her behavior just becomes more and more dramatic. Her temper even worse than before. And Maximilian starts to get a little concerned and possibly a little afraid. The final straw comes when during a performance, she really leans into the moment and for realistic effect, she stabs herself with a dagger and she lets herself bleed all over the stage and people are like, what the fuck?
She is a method actor. And yeah, willing to do that to herself. Crazy. I'm a little bit like, yeah, maybe she could do with a little bit of
therapy,
discipline, just to put her on the right track.
I agree. So Maximilian decides like enough is enough and he ends things with her. But of course, he's too scared to do it himself. So he sends the husband of one of his other mistresses to Julie's house to do it for him. It's basically a text message breakup. So
hang on. He sent the husband of one of his mistresses. So he's cool that his wife is cheating on him with the prince.
It's just a whole mess. It's hard to unpack that.
Yeah, okay. The fact that you can call on him to do that, that's weird.
So when the messenger gets there, he hands her 40,000 francs and a written note from Maximilian with orders to leave Brussels immediately. So she absolutely kicks the crap out of him, kicking him down the stairs before picking up the money off the ground and then heading back to Paris.
There's just no stopping this woman. And what is the time period for this? She's just gone to Brussels. I'm guessing she was probably there like a year or a few months or whatever.
Not long at all.
And she's already been kicked out of there. And she thinks going to Paris so soon? Okay. She needs an intervention.
I think so. So when she gets to Paris, she remembers, remember, I have a husband somewhere in the provinces.
Oh, how was she forgetting about this?
So she figures that her relaunch back into Paris society would be easier if she had a husband by her side. So she asked the Count Armagnac to summon her husband back from the provinces, which he obliges, of course, and her husband is just super happy to be back after all these years. He's like, my beautiful wife, I spent one day with you before I got ships off. We could be reunited.
Yeah, how long have they been apart?
Years, Adam. Years.
It's like, you're not how I remember you.
And that's him saying it to her. So with him back, she makes her triumphant return to the Paris Opera. However, shortly after he does return, he conveniently dies, which is fine because obviously she just needed him to reinstate her reputation, but also because she has just set eyes on her next lover.
Victim.
No, Adam, a lover. So this is it now. This is the final one.
This is the real deal.
This is the real deal. A woman who was so famously known as one of the most beautiful women in all of France, Madame la Marquise de Florenzac. We just call her Florenzac. Florenzac. Mm-hmm. Anyway, like she's gorgeous. The most beautiful woman in all of France. Like the king's son was so obsessed with her that even she had to flee to Brussels just to get away with it from him.
Pest.
So she's hot. Together they live in perfect happiness for about 2 years before Florenzac tragically dies of a fever in 1705. And Adam, Julie is left utterly heartbroken. Oh. That's the end of her. She can't go on. Julie just doesn't have the heart to continue in the opera after this, and she figures that she's getting towards her mid-30s anyway.
Her mid-30s at this point? Jeez.
So coupled with her grief, she decides that it's time to retire, and she moves to the southern provinces and joins a convent. So she's back where she started, basically.
I know where to get a new girlfriend.
I think she's done. No more. I don't think she's got any more kind of lesbianing in her.
I think it sounds like she's lived like a 50, 60-year life in the space of like 20 years.
Exactly. So between the ages of 34 and 37, we're not quite sure, she dies. Oh. And we don't know what from, but accounts simply say that she was deeply affected by the loss of her lover, that she just didn't have the will to go on in effect. Julie dies of a broken heart. And for a long while, people write about her, often using her story as a cautionary tale for what happens when women receive an education that's just not deemed appropriate for them. So basically for thinking too worldly or too independently. And it's a warning that this is what happens when you step outside of the gender norms and behave like a bloke.
Yeah, I often walk down the street and there are women just beating up men all over.
But you know, like there is a part of me, after knowing what we know about Julie, that thinks that maybe, just maybe, she faked her death and she pulled another body from the crypt and she took off somewhere to fight another day with some other woman.
Maybe, but why would she do that? Why? Unless she accidentally killed someone, then needed to fake her own death.
Oh, and they don't know who it is.
Yeah.
But maybe there's another part of me that just, for a split second, I wondered maybe she actually is Ira Stark. Maybe she's actually Maisie Williams. And when the role for Ira came up, she's like, lol, hold my screwdriver. I got this.
Yeah, she's about 400 years old, though, by this point.
Yeah, but you don't. There might be some kind of spell. Maybe she met some kind of witch on the side road off to Marseille or somewhere, or Bordeaux.
And have the writers actually said that Ira Stark was based on this woman?
Yeah, there's some strong indication that she inspired
Yeah, it sounds like
character.
it.
Yeah. The important thing is that she should be celebrated as a feminist gay icon. Someone who is literally centuries ahead of her time, living the life that feels right to her despite social constructs telling her no. Yeah. And I think that that's really inspiring to many people even today, not just women, like I said, but gay people, trans people, anyone who just does not fit their cookie cutter mold of what society expects from them. Although I'm not excusing her bad temper. She definitely needs to see a therapist about that, probably.
Yeah, but I like that she just took no shit. She did what was felt right to her.
Exactly.
And having all these sort of relationships with women, which, I don't know, that seemed that would be all underground, but she doesn't seem to care about that at all.
For sure. And Adam, that is the story of Julie d'Aubigny.
What a woman.
Yeah.
Formidable woman.
So, for our freaks out there, if you really enjoyed this type of topic, we have a few recommendations from our back catalogue that I was going through yesterday that you might want to revisit, or if you've not listened to them, go and check them out. Do you know which ones I'm going to say, Adam? What do you think my recommendations would be?
Marie Antoinette.
Of course, Marie Antoinette. So that was episode 5, Marie Antoinette, her life, her legacy. So that took place a little while after, obviously, King Louis XIV. So there would have been King Louis XVI, so his grandson.
Yeah, it was leading up to the French Revolution, wasn't it?
Lots of French accents in that one. But what a brilliant woman she was, right? There's so many things that we didn't know about Marie Antoinette. Also, we did the Radium Girls, episode 12.
Oh, yeah.
They were just incredible women, weren't they? Just how they fought against the establishment, and they helped create or force the government to create health and safety laws in the workplace. Those women were just inspirational. And then Amelia Earhart. She was cool as well. So that was episode 21. I'm still convinced that she was eaten by crabs, man.
That is the popular theory, right? Should we run the outro?
Let's do it. And that's it for another episode of the Compendium podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please follow us on your favorite podcasting app. It really helps us when you do. Next week's episode is available 7 days early on our free access Patreon. For more content, subscribe to our Certified Freak tier for access to our entire backlog of exclusive posts and sneak peeks. We'd love you to join us and have a chat. I'd like to welcome 2 new Patreons for this week, Carmen Woolley and Jennifer Chiriano. So good to have you guys in the big top tent with us. We release new episodes every Tuesday, and until then, remember, sometimes breaking the rules is the only way to write your own opera. See you next time.
See ya.